Welcome back to Infinite Geek Talk, an ongoing conversation between your hosts, former DC Comics editor and owner of Infinite Heroes in Watertown, Connecticut, Paul Santos, who is joined by Keith Field, co-founder of Gorilla Valley Games and the owner of Rat's Nest Studios. Let's listen in.
Well, Paul, this weekend I watched a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cartoon movie for babies, and I have to tell you, I enjoyed it very much.
Was it a movie or is it a series?
It's a movie. It was a movie.
Okay.
Now, I did no research ahead of time. I just saw the colorful likenesses of the beloved turtles,
right,
as reimagined by some sort of funhouse mirror, and said, yeah, you know what? Rather than just dismiss this as a thing for babies and creeps, I'm going to look at it. So it was one of those Nickelodeon-made Turtles projects. It was all odd, shifty art that I enjoyed very much.
Yep.
It's what I call like hipstery, messy, but with perfect and intentional flows of action.
Yeah, I call it the Nickelodeon style because it's very. It seems.
Oh,
to
is
show,
that common to their jazz?
It seems to be their big thing. Even their comedic cartoons are just animated very well.
Yep.
Like and even old stuff.
That was the thing.
Yeah.
You know, you have this sketchy, scribbly style. That border, you're like, I assume it's an actual curated style that they're going for.
Yeah.
And then when you see just how intentional the action is and how slickly done the actual animation was, it's like, yeah, you know what? I think that made the decision. Let me go ahead and watch this weird alternate take on the Turtles. It's weird. It was obviously just a sales, gimmick, whatever. That's by its very definition. But I don't say that in a bad way because I recognize that they are wonderful interactive commercials for toys, and I would dig those toys. I dug it a lot.
And this is the 10th iteration.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Turtles?
At this point, I don't even have a count. I don't know if it's an ongoing. I assume there's a show for babies and creeps on Nickelodeon that this backs up.
They had just launched one, and this might be it, but they had just launched one a couple of years ago that failed horribly. And I think
this one had Raphael was the leader, and he was gigantic and like meaty. They were more like superheroes. Michelangelo was a would-be sorcerer of some kind.
Right.
And Donatello still machines. He had the weird goggles coming up off his head.
Yeah, this might be the one that they tried and failed with. I don't know for sure. I'd have to. I mean, there's too much Turtles.
Me neither, and I wasn't committed enough. But kind of my even telling the story was to say I liked it because it had a neat toy video game buzz.
Cool.
It was a perfectly realized commercial as entertainment, and I say that in a non-ironic, straightforward way. I ended up liking the character choices. I would say that whoever voiced Michelangelo sounded far too feminine, and if it was a woman, then so be it. But madam, might I suggest you should not have been playing Michelangelo? Even the odd choices they made, like their April O'Neil had a screechy, kind of crazy, Macy Gray voice. Yeah. But even she was a fine character. I thought they made a solid choice. I bring it up because every once in a while, one of these things targeted toward babies and weirdos turns out to be kind of satisfying. And I have to say that in its simplicity and in its writing, whatever the hell I watched was A-okay. And last note, I, without doing any research, assumed that the DuckTales, the most recent DuckTales cartoon that I loved so much and would take a bullet for.
Yes.
Somehow in spirit, this cartoon shared a relationship with it. It had most of the voice cast and the general sense of humor and even the presentation of what I initially described as like millennial frantic style would carry between the two.
I will have to watch it.
Yeah, I dug it. It's a fine hour and 20. Oh. And as I'm watching it, I felt my hands itch because I knew that it would only be moments after the movie ended that I would be jumping back on my PS5 to play more of the Shredder's Revenge.
The Shredder's Revenge, great game.
Oh, good.
Great
so
game.
You are playing
Yes,
it.
yeah, great game. I broke down. I usually don't do digital, but I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to wait for the hard copy.
Yeah, it's not coming out for another few weeks as of this record.
Is it a few weeks? I thought it was like months.
No, that's coming out. Actually, wait, you might be right.
I think
because
it's months.
This is a wondrous time to be a fan of the more mainstream version of the Sweet Turtles.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. Best timeline ever. It's full of green. There is a collection of every Turtles side-scroller ever.
The Cowabunga collection.
The Cowabunga collection coming out this month.
Yes.
That comes out by the end of the month. I don't remember where the physical copy of Shredder's Revenge comes out in that math. You might be right. It might be months from now.
Yeah. And I always find those collections fun in spirit, but I already own those in dubious ways, so I don't need to buy them.
Now, Paul, we can speak to this because this has been an ongoing debate of the spirit within and without for a long time now. We're both big video game people. Those of you who've been listening to this ongoing conversation know that we've talking quite a bit about talking. New word. America. Genius is brewed within this studio. Talking for the masses, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm pretty sure that's like a Depression era word or something, right?
Talken. Talking.
Talking. Yeah,
Boom.
talking.
Keith Field resurrecting talking for a new generation.
Yes.
We'll avoid that, though, and say instead that we're both big fans. Oh, the land, oh, the video game. And that era in particular, that of our youth, the 80s segue into the 90s, some real gemstones there.
Right, and I know we've talked about this a little bit before. Like, I am old enough that a friend of mine had an Atari before I got an NES. So I played Atari, and I respect Atari. Right. But I hate every single Atari game ever made. Like, I just can't. I played for 5 minutes, and then I'm like, okay, now, I'm done. And
we will come back to that.
Yeah,
this sin that you spake in front of your friends. See, now that's spake. That's a little more mainstream than talking. Of this bit, I will say, lest I lose the thought, that given a gentleman who is a morally colorful astronaut in this grand galaxy of ours, I myself held a great disdain through the piracy of games.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and I say that as someone who might have walked out of a store with Tic Tacs accidentally earlier today. I feel we have to give back at the altar of these things that serve as our shared culture.
I have a whole argument, not that I would ever do this, but I'm just saying.
I know. You're with me here in White Knight territory. But no, I won't even linger there because we shouldn't be about judging anybody. I recognize what it is. That having been said, the affiliated and certainly more readily discussed conversation of digital ownership of something versus owning the old thing, right? Because that's where I started to segue. We both came from the birth of all this. It's possible for each of us to own every system that has come out that are the tent posts of the world of virtual plumbing and emulators and all the rest of it.
I think a lot of it has to do, it's too much, how do I say this without sounding hypocritical because I own a comic book store?
I think we've naturally gotten to the tone of where I wanted to get in that very spirit.
Yeah, it's hard.
Where do you come in the spirit, not about the theft, whatever, the monstrous theft that will see you chained in hell while I mock you from heaven.
Right.
It's... when you think about the fact that we live as collectors, right?
Yeah.
We have our own philosophies. I'm a minimalist collector for what it's worth, a spiritual collector.
Right.
You are a mighty shopkeeping hero of the land. Your collection still bears great girth, and what it is. As you then have, as we both do, so many other interests outside of the comics, it's interesting to see what things, my peers will gravitate toward outside of the comic with the same level of commitment or a lesser level of commitment. So I know that's all very wordy. Let us now, under that aegis, consider the video game.
So I will tell you my argument. I've seen other people have the same views, and I do too. When you're talking about, say, I don't know, NES to PlayStation 1, GameCube.
Okay, beautiful. That is a natural assessment of an era. Right.
You could buy a video game like Castlevania 3. You could buy Castlevania 3 physically for whatever it's going for, $50, hypothetically. You can, as an adult human with a job, and you're average at video games, it's going to take you a long time to physically go throughout that whole game.
Correct.
Right? Same thing like a Final Fantasy for NES or a Dragon Warrior or something. Because back then, video games companies hated you. And they just wanted you to play their game over and over again without any progress.
Correct.
So those games are broken to a certain extent.
That's one way of viewing it, and I won't fight it.
Right, but if you want to play throughout the whole thing, an emulator or ROM, it's much easier because you could either do save states or you straight up cheat.
Right.
And I would argue with save states, you are experiencing the game in its entirety. I think cheating is different. Right. You're not, but save states you are.
So that being the case then, and I certainly don't disagree philosophically with anything.
And that goes all the way to
it's not mine.
Right, and that goes all the way to PlayStation 1. I'm just using NES as the starting point.
Okay, so that period, that's your assessment of, whereas you would have a different assessment moving past that point, or no?
Yeah, moving past that point, I mean, like, there are just too many games that are like shit. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, you don't need to play Barbie's Puppy Palace or whatever, a game I just made up.
Yeah, well.
But even like the NES Barbie game is a platformer that's
now
just like
I kind of need to play that game.
Right.
Tell me about it, Paul.
I will invent it. No. But you could the NES is almost like Marvel Comics from the 60s. Or,
well, now that's it.
You know
You're
what I mean?
you're kind of intuiting where I'm going.
Right.
With
Is where we're going? Yeah.
Is that, and I'll just introduce it at this point quick, is that, and we'll get back to just that chronology. Given the fact that there has always been a mindset that has collected games, going back as far as the 2600, there are folks for whom collecting the games, various levels of commitment to the physical asset, before we knew we were going to be able to download this stuff in an eye blink, have always existed. I never thought of myself as a game collector, which is to say any game that I owned was purchased to be played.
Yeah, same. I'm the same way.
So now we have learned that you share that as well.
Yeah.
Now, that being the case, then, let me jump ahead slightly spiritually and ask that at this point, as we live in 2022, where not everybody decided to hold on to their shit,
right,
thus engendering a retro market from the curious, the people going to buy that stuff is presumably not going to dip their toe in and try to play Chinese Kung Fu Heroes. It's a case of wanting to collect the asset. They've decided ownership of those games and those systems is enough of a sort of map of totems to their past that they need to own those games, curate those games, even with no thought of selling them or reselling them.
Yes.
What do you think of video games as an iconic collectible?
Oh, I think it's great.
Yeah?
I mean,
you dig that market?
Yeah, I see them as collectibles. Not for me personally. Like, I can appreciate record collecting, but I don't own a single album. So like,
that's what I'm saying.
Get it.
So your personal cue of that's what I'm talking about, like peer comparison of a collectible.
But I would say out of even cards, I think video game collecting is more akin to comic book collecting
because there's a secondary purpose. You have a totem pole, you have this little post, but you could also open up a comic and read it.
And you could
video games are very similar in that way.
Yeah, and then there are people who collect only Zelda games or Pokemon games or whatever
Wait a minute,
have
Paul, I've heard of those people.
Right.
And if you glance under my television, America and beyond, you'll see my collection. There are a bunch of video games. They're not my collection. Those are just games that I happen to own and play at this time. But the actual collection, which rests under a Legend of Zelda saddlebag, is every Zelda game ever made.
Yeah.
That was what I decided for myself, was after getting rid of all my games over the course of time, it was never going to matter to rebuild a physical asset collection per se, so let me thematically create a little collection to scratch that itch.
Yeah, and
to symbolically represent decades of buying physical games.
Right, and I'd rather
that is my Zelda collection.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I already collect too much stuff. Like, I need to draw a line.
Same.
And between comics and figures and to a certain extent statues, I'd rather just have these games digitally, where I know I could play them whenever I want.
And
they're old. You're not like when you buy a Konami game from 1987. No one is getting that money.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And
that's why
we'll
go back to your qualification of everything up to PS1, because I think that reasoning is strongest then.
Yeah.
You're not going to go buy a copy of Crazy Ivan for $50 or $60 unless you're collecting it to fill a gap into a collection of every PlayStation game.
And again,
or every video game with the word Ivan.
And you're gonna get a thing that's called board rot in older video games. They're gonna not work pretty. I mean, Atari is the oldest known system. There are older systems, but the more popular one is Atari.
We'll say mainstream.
Mainstream,
Your point is made.
But those games are going to start breaking down, I think, the next decade.
Correct.
So like...
Well, Paul is a collector, not of video games per se, but certainly of exploitation media.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Every time poor Amber Lynn's face melts away, and I consider the mortality of physical assets.
Film holds up much better than...
It's still the principle. Yeah. It's more heartbreaking, because you think you have the immortality of something that isn't degrading.
Right.
And then suddenly Amber is turned to fluid, and I can't get anything out of it. No.
But yes, I enjoy, and I'm more of a, same thing with... like, I consume video games, right? Like, I want to play through. It's almost like reading a book or a comic or watching a movie. Like, I want to play the game, experience the game, but my OCD is I want to finish it.
Yep.
Paul,
and 100% understand. As my friends can tell you, I've spent an entire life being yelled at by people when, and I will admit, when I was young, I more or less got off on doing it, when I would very quickly announce to my peers, yep, just beat it. And sometimes it was night of. I was that guy.
Oh, I was not.
I was.
Not
and
that
it would
guy.
be, what the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was my third F-bomb, and it was in the most pointlessly uncommitted environment. Mocking my middle school peers, mocking me for beating my game so quickly.
That's pretty good.
I was that guy.
Good drop, yeah.
I guess. I was that guy. I was the one who had just an almost like mental damage level need to beat games as quickly as possible. I might then go back and enjoy them, especially if there was a save file that I could go and continue to unlock secrets and whatnot. But
sure, right.
yeah, I was always that idiot wasting money.
Well, because
I refuse to rent games because we didn't lose a war and I don't like used things. There, I've said it. With the exception of comics and various vintage collectibles.
Right. Well, I mean, I have a whole thing with, especially NES. Like, I
never had to blow into my Nintendo. And yeah, I know I opened myself up to some sort of mockery or some sort of dirty joke there. But I was never one of those people because I made sure everything was clean and pristine.
Right. Well, they told you not to clean it with alcohol, which is a lie.
Benzene or paint thinner. What's the first thing YouTube tells us? Go get some paint thinner.
Yeah.
Go get some rotting alcohol. And you'll be playing Bayou Billy by midnight.
Right. And the NES games, now that we know all the behind-the-scenes stuff and stories, they're made, they're trolling their player base. They want you to
It's a little tinfoil hat, Paul.
No, I'm not the one who came up with this. They made it so you can't. They want you to spend as much time on the game without buying another game for certain things.
It's called the LJN principle.
Well, yeah, that's
If the only game I own is Nightmare on Elm Street 2,
that's it.
Then I'm not going to buy another game till I've beaten Freddy.
Right.
I assume that was the goal. You don't play LJN games.
And I've enjoyed, I've not beaten, but I've played every NES game. But a lot of people could, because you could get your ROMs and get that through.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, Paul, is that hyperbole? Or have you literally done it? No one's going to judge you negatively.
I've literally played them all.
You made it a goal to play them all.
I'm
going to tell you that's the collection of a certain spirit.
Yeah, I mean, I
applaud that project.
I've had these digital games for 20 years. So
and Paul, I'm going to need you to join my class action lawsuit against Nintendo.
Oh God!
To bring Devil World to the U.S.
Oh, I've not done Famicom games, but
well, I'm glad I was able to make you qualify the statement within my first statement about this project of yours.
Yeah.
But I don't judge you for that.
Yeah, no,
because there are so many cool games that never came out over here. The Famicom, the family computer system put out by Nintendo.
It's the NES, basically.
Is more or less what our NES comes from. There are lots of nifty games on it that never come out. There's no chance they're ever going to come out in the U.S.
No.
I say that, but then the Nintendo Virtual Store, the weirdest stuff shows up there.
I mean, that thing is...
I can get so many naughty games from Nintendo
But
now.
Nintendo is... That's the other thing, and this is just... when Marvel or DC, right, they do a collection of original... They reprint the first 12 issues of Amazing Spider-Man.
Right.
They charge you $40, which is cheaper than a 12-issue run of a modern series.
Right.
But then Nintendo will be like, here's Donkey Kong Jr. for $10. And you're like, what the hell am I paying for?
I suppose it's worth discussing that over the years, whenever Nintendo has put out an experimental new peripheral, and this would include their various virtual stores,
systems,
the virtual systems. It would include things like the Game Boy card reader.
No.
Whenever there is a short list of about 24 games that are the go-to free to experimental titles that Nintendo will always release. And if I was going to drop that F-bomb, I would have dropped it here somehow, randomly, after any sentence. Because Keith Charles Field has bought every one of them. See, it would have been right there.
Oh, no.
That's where I put it at the F. Every time they come out, would you like to discuss how many times I've bought Balloon Fight and in how many different varieties I have? Balloon Fight, Urban Champion, Excite Bike, Mario Brothers. Not Super Mario Brothers, Mario Brothers. Let me go back and say Urban Champion one more time because I feel I need to.
Yeah, that is...
these are the games that are... Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong. And let me point out again, which I may have said on this podcast, but I've certainly said on at least 2 others, The fact that every time Nintendo puts out damn Donkey Kong or Donkey Kong Jr., they don't fix the order of the levels.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because notoriously, when this game came out in the US in the 80s, the original Donkey Kong, and somehow Donkey Kong Jr.,
Correct, yeah.
the boards were flipped, which meant that the orders don't happen in a proper progression. It's supposed to go, okay, we'll start with regular Donkey Kong. From the girder level, where we see the pink girders leading up to Pauline, to the elevator level. Okay, you with me so far?
Yeah.
And the elevators go up and down.
Right.
To the cement factory, sometimes erroneously called the pie level. This is the level with conveyor belts, and there are cement buckets going toward the oil drums. To the final level, which is the blue ziggurat level, or as some call it, the rivets level.
Right.
Where you pop all the rivets and Donkey Kong falls to the bottom of the screen. This is because this is, in the minds of many, myself included, the first major successful video game that had a real boss in it.
Yeah.
You can sit there and talk about Gorf all you want, kids, and then you can throw frigging Phoenix, the follow-up, or a spiritual brother to Gorf. But the fact is, modern game is kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
That we're still fighting today. That's the order they're supposed to be in. The levels in Donkey Kong Jr., not to bore you all, basically are spiritual reinventions of those 4 levels. So the same order is supposed to exist in both those games. When they came out in the US, they come out in the wrong order. Nintendo never fixes it. Other people release the game. Some lunatic gangsters in Hungary release malware in the form of a rip-off Donkey Kong. They'll put the order corrected. Please, Nintendo, please give me what I want. Please give me a proper, this is what we intended version of Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr.
And that's why
I bought your effing game 17 times.
And this is why I think
repay my loyalty.
And I think this is why people don't mind using ROMs or emulators because of stuff like this.
Right.
It's very
those are the things that you can use to justify not paying for Urban Champion a 14th time.
Right. And there's also,
I don't disagree with any of them.
And there's also games that they'll never put on there.
True enough.
The 1-Up arcades, so these are like mini arcade cabinets that you buy at Walmart for $500. They'll have licensed games that Nintendo has claimed, we can never get our licensed games because it's impossible. But 1-Up Arcade is a fairly new company.
2 morons with a saw and a stack of strawberry pies have entered into marketing with frigging Walmart and are selling Ms. Pac-Man arcades for $500, fake arcade games for $500
They have Capcom units that have all the Marvel arcade games or like the Predator and Aliens. Right. But Nintendo's like, I don't know, the licensing
whoa. Is there one out there with Predator versus
Yes, it's the Capcom beat 'em up. Yeah.
Well, I might have to spend $500.
Yeah, you might have to go online.
I have an unusual love of that game. It's been Paul, as I brought it up just yesterday.
It's a very good game.
We were talking about the movie Prey, the sequel to Predator that just came out.
Oh, which have you seen? You said you saw it.
I did.
You did see it. Yeah.
Have you seen it, Paul? I'd like to think you could keep me straight from our beloved brothers and sisters in the customer base.
That's true. Well, everybody had seen it. I
really feel hated and devalued as an employee. Rich, get HR on the phone.
Every person has seen this movie but me, so I have to see this.
It's good. I give it a thumbs up. An official, unqualified thumbs up.
I chose The Gray Man instead.
And you said that's good.
That was very good.
So in a reciprocal, I plan to watch it.
Yeah, very good in terms of Chris Evans is amazing in it.
Good.
And the writing is very good, but the actual plot leaves a lot to be desired. Okay. But it's still a very good movie.
Well acted and slick. But the deal with Prey was I liked it enough that I made a list for you and for another chum of the Predator media that has made Predator one of my favorite things, even though I hate most Predator stuff.
Right. As most people.
And I'll just share that. We won't have a long conversation about it, but it is video game related, and we are talking about video games. For Keith, that list is Predator.
Yep.
Predator 2.
Yep.
Prey, and the side-scrolling arcade game.
Oh, cool.
That is my Predator universe. Honorable mention, the third act of Predators.
Yes, yeah.
And the original Dark Horse Mini. Because obviously I can't have my video game without Dutch. Right. Or whatever the cousin brother's name was.
Dutch's brother.
Dutch's brother or cousin. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
He was the hero of the Dark Horse series, and he was one of the heroes of that video game. So, back to it.
Yeah, so, I mean...
Nintendo could get their properties back.
Yeah.
They just lazy.
So I like being able to, like, if I decide, going through my NES library at night, that I'm like, I want to play and beat Kid Icarus, I could just do it.
Which you just did.
Which I just did 2 weeks ago, or last week, I don't remember now.
Hey, now, you did mention when we were having this chat, and it's kind of what brought us around to be talking about video games today, that you just wanted to see the game, basically. So this leads me to one of my points. So using Kid Icarus as an example,
right?
That you're like, it's one of the points in the Nintendo compass that I'd never done, so I wanted to get it done.
Sure.
I totally respect that. I think the same way about stuff. Because to me, that's exactly the answer to, how do you feel about collecting games?
Yes.
Other than putting together like a little art piece like the Zelda collection for presentation's sake, no, I don't see the worth in collecting them either. I especially don't because just as a point of laze, I never bothered to get rid of most of my games.
Right.
So as I said in a previous installment of this podcast, there was a day when I had virtually every game that was ever released for that era. But I don't bemoan it because for me, the loss of it to a very cruel bunker in the heart of South Dakota and a criminal conspiracy dedicated to cruelty within, I will say simply that I feel like a game is to be consumed to inform your overall everything of all this stuff we've experienced within the rainbow of the genre, and then moved on from. And it can inform those future playthroughs and those future purchases. But before I forget to make the point again, I'm not interrupting you. I apologize.
Sure, no, it's a problem.
My follow-up question to you, Paul, is once a game is beaten, once a game is consumed, once a game moves on, what games have you ever gone back to or regretted not having access to make play of, whether virtually or
physically? That's easy.
Actually, it's two different questions. So let's start with
I go back.
What games have you gone back to?
It's pretty easy. A lot of the NES games I owned as a kid, I've gone back to a lot.
Yeah.
Like the original 3 Super Mario Brothers games.
Sure.
All the Mega Man games.
Really?
Both. Yeah, I like Mega Man a lot, even though it's sometimes a pain in the ass.
The minor segue then on that point. How deep of it? Because that's always my question to people that with the multi-franchise games that were sacred calves back in the 8 and 16-bit era.
Yeah.
Most of us have fallen off at some point. I fell off of Street Fighter around 6. I'm back on that horse now.
Oh, sure.
I've played all the way up to the current and gotten relatively good at current generation Street Fighter, but. I, again, can answer that 6 until I rebirthed the interest. How deep did you get with Mega Man?
I would say all the games that mattered. So, like...
Well, again, to the Paul school of thought,
yeah,
what is
the Mega Man 1 through 10. Oh, no, I played 11. I didn't beat 11.
Right.
So Mega Man 1
I know
through
you
11.
hadn't done the most recent one.
Yeah. All the Mega Man X...
Which I loved. Screw you all. Go on.
Mega Man X, which has 6 games?
Mega Man X, I only did the first 2. I felt they were too easy. That's right, America. That is not a flex.
I'll play 3.
X was dumb easy. I don't know what you're all talking about.
Mega Man X3 is pretty hard.
It ratcheted it up at 3?
Yeah, it's pretty hard.
Okay.
Both Mega Man Legends games.
By the way, love the X story.
Oh, yeah.
More so than the core story.
Yeah. I love how, like, they... because originally, a lot of people thought that he is Mega Man... But I think they've now just said
they've now established it's another robot.
Yeah.
They had established it right off the bat.
Nah,
but it was a soft suggestion that it might have been parts. Like a sort of a Galvatron thing.
Like he died.
You rebuilt him from his remains. Yeah.
And then the Mega Man Legends games. I never played those.
Oh no, Paul.
I love Mega Man Legends.
Paul, I have to hit pause because Mega Man Legends deserves a long-form conversation. I used Galvatron, a transformer.
Yes.
As a proof of just conversational open matter when we weren't talking about Transformers. I always thought I was a better class of geek.
Oh, no.
It happens. I'm not. I'm part of the problem, Paul.
Yeah, no, it happens.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you must, you may decide. I leave it to all of you. If you decide I must be shot into the sun.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're okay.
All right, we won't linger. Let's move on.
And I didn't play any of those, like the Battle Network games.
Oh, they're more for like babies and creeps.
Yeah, those are the stuff like that.
The things based on the most recent, or actually not most recent, the things based on the American release cartoon.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't play
There was a Rockman cartoon, by the way, in Japan.
I know, I saw it. I watched it.
Really?
I've seen it. Mm-hmm.
I've never seen any of that.
It's pretty good.
My only exposure to it was at a con years ago. Right when Power Rangers was coming out, I bought a tape of the first 4 episodes of Zhu Ninja, and the last 4. So I got to see the open and the close of the first season's Sentai series that was cannibalized for the first few seasons of Power Rangers. And there were little commercial clips because they were taking off video. And he's like, yeah,
right.
And it looked like it was just heaven on earth.
Yeah, it was very good. It was very good. The internet, you can watch anything, kids.
That's true.
So
I've never bothered to go looking for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone back.
So I'm a Mega Man fan. Yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah, and I'm a very like.
Are really good and doesn't get enough talk about the Mega Man games for the Game Boy. Did you play those?
I have played those. Yeah, they
really
are very
good.
Yes,
man.
I played them. They're very, very good. I also like the Wily Wars.
Yes.
That game. I wish I found out about that game much later in life.
Good game, man. Good game.
And I was mad that I didn't play it back in the 90s. I'm like, what the hell?
We're burying the lead. Even though I've had limited exposure to them, the Legends games.
Oh, I love them. They're great. They're great.
They have such a following, and we're never going to see any of it.
No, because Capcom is a terrible company. I mean...
Now, Paul.
No, they're not terrible. They're not Konami. I take that back.
Now, Paul.
No, I'm never working for either video game company, so...
That's very close-minded.
But
hi, Capcom and Konami. It's me, your old buddy Keith. Just don't you forget who offered you nothing but love and acceptance on every angle when you're looking for someone to head your burgeoning new comics division.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, Capcom, there's a little bit of hope, right? Because
they're going to start Commander Babyhead from those Commander Capcom games.
They've got those...
Or Captain Capcom, whatever they ended up.
It's Captain Capcom.
I think he was
Commando.
in Commando.
Anyway.
He had a baby for a head, Paul.
He did.
I can't be blamed for not being totally specific, but yeah, he will be the start of the Capcom Konami extended universe.
Cinematic universe.
Go on.
They're remaking all the Resident Evil games. So there's some hope maybe at some point.
Did you play 2 and 3, the remakes?
The remakes I have not. I played the original ones.
So 2 got all the love in God's world. Everybody thought it was perfection.
3, right?
But 3 isn't a remake, it's a reimagining.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it's more of a rail shooter than survival horror. So wake up, Capcom. This is why Paul says he hates you.
Right, correct.
I love you, but this is why Paul thinks you've forgotten what you've set out to do in making and selling video games.
Yeah.
You know, make and sell video games.
I'd
never say that, though. I'm looking forward to my time writing that book about Babyhead. So let's not lose track of that.
But you could see through my love of comics that like I do like the mascot, the main characters of these franchises. Zelda, like Link and Legend of Zelda and Mega Man. So I gravitate towards those games.
Yep. Characters that are kept alive by enduring franchises. I mean, even I too stand heroically on such points. My version of it is, who is this interesting new individual that's shown up on my Rule 34 website? But beyond that, it's whatever characters are able to lead multi-part franchises, right? Your Links and your urban champions.
Right, yeah.
This is a thing, Paul. Where does Paul stand in the universe of Smash? Are you a Smashman?
So I kind of suck at Smash.
Oh.
And I'm not, I should also preface this, I am not good at fighting games.
I like that you admit that, Paul. It's a certain dignified vulnerability that I find appealing.
There's only a handful that I am good at. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Arcade.
Okay.
Not in home system, I'll get killed.
What is the Paul Santos combo?
Mega Man, Iron Man, and Spider-Man.
I am very boring in my selection.
What do you have?
Venom.
Okay.
Wolverine.
Oh, yeah.
And then mood character. Whatever I just happen to be in the
mood for. Whatever you're in the mood for.
And I will do my best to just stick with Venom throughout the entire fight.
I mean, listen, I will take out Spidey and put in like Cable or
the third is for varieties.
Yeah, it depends on how I'm feeling.
But the Wolverine Venom team up is an inflexible law for Keith Charles Field.
Yeah, I need Iron Man and Mega Man because they're cheap. In the arcade, you spam them like crazy.
Not me. That's why the high finesse character of Wolverine is in my choice, Liz. Yeah, spamming is good.
But I'm not... Yeah,
I don't pretend to be great at Capcom games. The exception that was the rule for me was Power Stone.
Okay.
I haven't played Power Stone in over a decade. I will take anyone alive at Power Stone.
Okay. Yeah.
You give me my Jack the Ripper mummy, Synergy.
Yeah, yeah.
Power results.
Yeah, and I know when I was playing, we played Injustice 1 and 2 at DC before they came out.
That's fun to think about.
Yeah. And I was doing pretty well against like the people who had obviously never played a fighting game ever. But both times I got beat pretty bad by people who play video games. And it also comes down to...
Well, Paul, let's not step on a teachable moment. What big name DC folk are good at video games?
No, nobody. These are all employees. There's nobody. Not Jim Lee. No one fought against Jim Lee or Dan
that's what's always fascinated me.
Yeah.
The only creator of the recent past that I got any sense of like the video game climate behind the scenes was Bendis, because he would talk about it very openly in his pages.
Walt Simonson is a huge video game fan.
Really? See, that's cool stuff.
Huge, like, Zelda fan.
Neat.
He approached... When he found out Wildstorm had World of Warcraft,
was he the one who initiated that?
Who approached them to say, I want to write this.
Well, let me ask you then, because this isn't a slam against the master, because we know Walt is indeed the master. That series was very broken on arrival.
I've heard
what happened
Blizzard,
there, Paul?
Blizzard happened.
I assume it was 100% Blizzard. Yeah.
From what I've been told, and this is pretty public knowledge.
Yeah. I'm not asking to air anything. I mean, Lord knows, Blizzard does a fine enough job of tarnishing its own reputation.
I don't know do you remember the series at all?
Oh, very much so.
So the #1 sold gangbusters.
That's what I'm saying.
It was like it was Wildstorm's biggest book since like Thundercats. That's how far Wildstorm had fallen.
Right.
And they were original character. No, the main character was a lore guy.
He was a lore guy, reimagined massively. That was Varian Rin, the King of Stormwind.
But everyone else was new.
Correct.
And
for the characters that would be his companions, the slavers, you'd usually get like one lore character an issue, and it was someone very underwhelming.
So what happened was it was very good. I'd say 6 issues. Very good, or less.
I can give you a little more of the intimacy of quality, if I would. And then you can talk about the mechanics.
I'm forgetting the quality. Yeah.
What they did was this: as someone who was indeed a wowsman from the beginning. I'll speak in an in-universe style to make it palatable. Basically, the King of Stormwind, one of the major in-game cities of the MMO game, World of Warcraft, and of the lore in general, was a character in concept. When narratively, the narration of the Warcraft RTS games concludes after a great war and the world is rebuilding. So the bridge after the game, the RTS and the MMO, saw a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff happen. Now they use novels to kind of bridge those gaps.
Right. This is
where the game opened, where vanilla opened, there was a plot line in which one of the game world villains, a successor character, one of the daughters of the major evil dragon character, had infiltrated the government and initiated the kidnapping of the king. Very little had been established about this king.
Right.
But nonetheless, he was a lore character. He was initially represented in-game in a series of tunnels under Alcaz Island, for those of you who play World of Warcraft or are vaguely familiar with it, that you could kind of slip down. You didn't even really have to use an exploit, but King Varian Rin was in a jail cell surrounded by max-level elite mobs.
Okay.
After a long period of time passed, this asset was then used as part of a major in-game event was intended to be part of a major in-game event to release the king. That never happened. Instead, that area was used as part of the War of the Shifting Sands, the opening of the gates of Anchorage. And the king just was eventually removed from that cell, and the island was repurposed as the lair of an evil leper gnome named Dr. Weevil, who was made a part of that other event that was going on.
Right.
Rather than reintroduce the king in-game, the decision was made to introduce him through secondary media, the same way they were using novels to bridge gaps in the game's storyline. And in this case, the decision was made to marry to the world of comic bookery.
Yes.
And so this series was meant to give us the king, who would then join the in-game goings-on of the World of Warcraft, and his coolness would be established because we've had this epic series of comics that have built him into the most just awesome alpha destruction ball that ever was. And what we got was a first issue that was full of promise and hope, and then an increasingly strangled narrative that gave us the most unpleasantly convoluted story of where the king's been and how he came back, that character never recovered or gained any of the prominence that WoW had wanted, that Blizzard had wanted, to the point where he was killed off quite a few years ago.
So what happened, what I've been told, and this series lasted a few years, I think.
Yeah, when the initial storyline about the king was concluded, they tried a secondary introduction of a new Mary Sue to replace their Merlin-like wizard character. It was a character named Medan, who would have been the son of Medivh, the big sorcerer, savior, progenitor, villain character. And the response to him was so frigging negative, he was erased from lore.
So Walt Simonson was told you only have to use this one character to do whatever else you want.
You can tell any story.
That is not what happened. Apparently, Blizzard, after the first issue, for whatever reason, probably just internal politics stuff, was very hands-on.
Yep.
So Simonson would
write
a
nerds
script.
got to gatekeep, especially creepy nerds.
So he would write a script. They would hate all of it. Change it on him, and he talks about it. That's why he left, because he didn't finish. He didn't write what you were talking about with the Blizzard stuff. Don't know why they promised Wildstorm and Walt they could do whatever they wanted in terms of story.
Yeah.
And then every issue is increasingly you can't do this instead, or you can't do that.
Well, it's because Blizzard, and I don't worry about saying this aloud in the same way that you said horrible things about my beloved friends Capcom and Konami. Blizzard is a frat house filled by people of negotiable talent.
Right.
And you can make a case-by-case suggestion that this person had a vision, that person had a vision. Those people would be the tiny handful that I would consider to be at least on the fringes of old and established gaming community that matters, all capitals. So whereas a gentleman who was once the life's blood of Dungeons & Dragons like Jeff Grubb might have run a D&D game that included X, Y, and Z at Blizzard, I'm going to suggest that what we got wasn't Jeff Grubb. And if that sounds sour, I don't care, because look what you people built with your success. Shame on all of you.
Right.
Now, that having been said, I would say, with certainly not suggesting this is one of the individuals I'm talking about, but Chris Metzen had a singular vision for that game. He was the primary story head honcho, and man, could he rock prescription sunglasses. Totally not a douche look at all, buddy. You're on the right side of history. I don't want to say anything negative about you, because you certainly didn't know about the horrors that were going on at your frat house. So that having been said, he carried enough of a tabletop game's decades of professionally manufactured and crafted lore with him that informed the original Verve story and soul that was the Warcraft universe.
Right.
And it was unique because you felt like you were playing through the D&D game of Masters.
Right. Well, I have a theory, too, that the first issue was responded to well, and they probably just got jealous.
Oh, is this something? Oh, no.
Yeah,
and that's exactly, you've beaten me, because that's where I was headed. That our man Metzen is a frustrated comic book writer.
Yeah.
I say no more. His heroes on a book should have been the happiest time of his life. But it's about keeping gates. And oh no, old man, wait, modern Verve. Here, use these characters nobody cares about.
Yeah, and I think the last Warcraft books from Wildstorm were written by Blizzard people.
Yes, they were.
I think they just got Wildstorm got fed up and said, no, if you guys are making this much changes, you guys just write them.
And they were gross,
and they failed.
dickering, convoluted in the deep cracks of what was going on in game stuff that was just no fun to read.
Warcraft #1 sold like 100,000 copies, and then by the time it was dead, it was selling under 10,000 by Blizzard people. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
And I did read an interview with the master, Walt Simonson, that his enthusiasm did come across.
Yeah.
And I assumed that it was just being a company man in terms of his talking about the love of the game.
Right.
My nephew plays, and I play over his shoulder, and blah blah blah. But if you say he is a committed gamesman,
he's a huge Zelda fan. Huge. He has talked about how Nintendo are jerks for not. You remember the '90s Nintendo comics?
Oh yeah.
Valiant.
Yeah.
I don't know what Jim Shooter did to Nintendo or what, but like those series were best-selling books.
I bought every single number one.
I think I have a full run of Valiant Nintendo.
Dude, the concept of an evil game designer who gets all the way to the end boss on his Game Boy to Super Mario Land just to let Mario die because he hates Mario so much and venerates the villain of the game, Tatonga the Spaceman, is so twisted and such a waste of IP. I love it.
I think what happened too is that it was Western. It wasn't manga translated. It was American.
It was all
comics.
American, yeah. It was crap.
And the lore, I know that the Zelda lore is the Zelda comics are very, very good.
Correct.
And I think every time I look in previews, which is the comic book catalog, and I see like a Legend of Zelda manga, or I go to Barnes & Noble and I look at it, it's not the same.
Correct.
It's, it's the Western audience wants like Western Zelda or Metroid.
They don't want 10 years about this dippy boy waifu who has humble adventures that don't involve a sword.
With like side characters.
These are the 3 issues in which I milk the friggin' cows.
Yeah, it's very bizarre.
And with characters that have never been in the game.
They'll never, Who
is this mysterious ninja, with a tentacle growing out of his back with a samurai head at the end of it? What the hell am I looking at?
I saw a game once, or a manga once at Barnes & Noble where Link is with some random anime girl. That's it. She's just like in the adventures. They're in a village together, and you're just like, what is going on? Yeah.
If they're happy with it, I suppose that's enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think even now, video game comics, there aren't as much as people think.
Every time I see a book put out by Udon and I see the female perfection on those covers,
I don't know why they don't do.
I'm like, why is this not a thing that can happen every month? What is wrong with the world that denies me?
I don't know.
All of the Chun-Li.
Yeah, they have an agreement because they do all the art books and stuff like that. Every once in a while, they'll do like a swimsuit issue to buy.
Yeah. Every once in a while. You know what's better than that? Every other week. Look, hi, Keith Field here, proven homosexual. Fact of the matter is, I'd like a life that has more of Cammy's butt in it. So please, Studio Udon, do what you can.
It's also the other problem where like it's much easier and faster and more lucrative for artists to do pinups, and that's my thing with Udon. I think they just focus on pinups and covers, which is unfortunate.
You know, a brilliant artist by the name of Jim Lee during COVID to help all those comic book shops out there drew a pinup a day of a random Marvel character that was then auctioned off to make money for failing things. And what that proved to me was the world needs pinup books. The world needs themed art books again. Because it was the most exciting thing that came out during COVID. I want that on a regular basis. And if it can involve Cammy's butt, well, then sorry, Jim.
Oh, we have a winner. You haven't looked at there's a lot of Capcom art books.
I know there are.
Tons
I want more of them.
Oh wow! All right.
I want. This is what I'm talking about. This is vision, Paul. I want a monthly. I want a art book monthly.
Oh yeah,
it can happen. $5, I'd buy it.
Yeah. It's a weird.
Let's see them in the Antarctic half naked. Let's see them in Atlantis with Pepe Larrigo.
This is
look. He doesn't just have to swim the blues.
Well, this is a comics history lesson. Udon or Udon, whatever you want to call them, is another one of these imprints that went to Image, became huge, and then for some reason decided to strike out on their own, and then no one remembers their comic book company anymore. Right. Like, I literally do not know what Udon puts out until someone says something, and then there's a like a 3-centimeter ad in previews being like Chun-Li's Adventures #1.
Paul,
and I'm like,
what
what
is
is
they
this?
had gone under 10 years ago. I got employed by a little concern called Infinite Heroes, where I'm making up for lost time. You know, getting back into the hook of the intimacies of the industry, and seeing that they've still been around broke my heart.
It's crazy.
It's like I've been talking about a monthly sexy book for a decade with these people. Come on.
And I think they have they'll never lose the license either because Capcom, the art books make them money. Yeah. So I'm sure someone like Dynamite or IDW would love to have the Capcom.
I'm just saying we could all be making more money, kids. There's a difference between the quality in a monthly versus a big fancy art book.
Every once in a while, they'll do like a Mega Man comic which is Capcom. I mean, there's an art book, and
I don't care about Mega Man's ass. I'm a very complicated member of my organization.
Well, and that's the other weird thing. Have you looked? So you know about these art books that exist?
Well, of course.
Have you looked at the recent ones? Because they are like risque.
They know who their audience is, and they know what their audience sees on a regular basis on those very Rule 34
like
websites.
Felicia from.
So they're trying to meet him halfway.
Well, Felicia from Darkstalkers
and et al.
Right. She's like in these poses where I'm like, she's supposed to have fur there. What are you guys doing? Yeah,
no. She's a hero. It's funny to me. That's her heroism shining through. Rendering fur translucent.
Right.
And speaking of which, I feel the world should be much more excited than it is about the existence of the Capcom fighting game collection. Just came out 2 weeks ago.
Well, these are the problems.
I own my copy, damn it.
This is the problem.
I'm going to be Felician all day long.
Well, this is the
once I get past Live a Life,
right.
Live a Life, or whatever the hell it's called.
This is my loop around too with these. As being in comics and working in comics.
Yeah.
It's been proven that like when you go back to an established property, it's at least beneficial just to keep that property alive.
Right.
It's crazy to me.
The whole software industry was based around that mentality.
It's insane.
Better to grab a dead franchise and dust it off than start fresh because someone will remember Conkers.
And I'm not even going to mention Capcom because it's just it's only a few franchises.
You shouldn't. They're angels. They're sweet angels.
But Capcom...
Every mistake you made with Bionic Commando wasn't your fault. God bless you, Capcom.
Right.
I'm staring at Paul to see what he does.
Capcom...
Picking up a knife. Get away, Capcom.
Yeah, Capcom needs to, like, people want, like, a Darkstalkers game or a Bionic Commando game.
And they refuse.
And they refuse to do it. And
we keep them trapped in a vault.
I mean, Darkstalkers... People could buy Darkstalkers t-shirts and merchandise. There hasn't been a game in 20-plus years.
Let me direct you to the Capcom fighting game collection.
But that's the old one.
It involves the one that was never involved in, never released in the U.S.
In the U.S.? Oh,
and
great.
Exception. It's the actual ROMs. You don't feel like you're playing an emulator.
Right.
And there's a Puzzle Fighter.
What is that?
Puzzle Fighter is more important than any fighting game that ever was.
Is that 99, 98? What is that?
Well, obviously it's from long ago.
Right.
Your point is made. But
that's
still,
the thing. I mean,
very happy to own it, and you should be too.
And I say that knowing like they don't. It's Street Fighter was like pulling teeth for them.
When I watch the dedicated streamers, guys like Maximilian Dude or Matt McMuscles and
name dropping people.
No. I'm just letting you know who I watch. We are so beneath their feet. That's why I'm mentioning or my sweet Scott the Waz, who I want to marry more than anything. When they are having this discussion about these games and Capcom's seeming apathy, the thing that always comes back to it, and this is why I drop their names, is they don't know why Capcom treats their properties like this either.
No one does.
It's not clear. It's some sort of narrative we don't have access to.
Right.
Why they keep the stuff trapped? Why they everything they've done with farming out properties and a seeming want to kill them. We will not make Bionic Commando a marquee game. Instead, we'll use it as an experiment to see if we can find and field American talent or out of area talent. I know
that somebody wanted to buy all of Konami's properties, like Metal Gear. It's not that many.
I'll buy them $20.
What is
now?
It's like Metal Gear.
But I love them. As if I spent $20 billion.
Right. It's Metal Gear and Castlevania. And maybe other
Bayou Billy.
Oh yes, the seminal Bayou Billy.
Contra. Come on, Paul, with the Contra.
Well, so an American company, I don't know if it's a media company, video company, tried to sell them, and Konami had no interest, and that's insane. It's like you're
not for what they've done. So what I was going to ask you about the Kid Icarus thing was this.
Yes.
Well, and why do I bring it up right now? Because look how long it took to get another Kid Icarus. Now, a lot of people don't know there was a Kid Icarus for the Game Boy.
Yeah, I remember.
That is considered a sequel to the original, even though it's basically the same game.
Right.
That would happen on occasion back in the day.
Right.
Here are my other 2 points on Kid Icarus. Number one, you told me you'd use playthroughs and game states and all that, and we can open that as a larger discussion maybe next episode. But I don't judge people negatively for that per se, but we'll have a chat about that aspect of the virtual gaming. And you were using sites so that you could kind of narrate your way through the game if you'd gotten stuck.
Right.
Did you do what I hope you did? When you found out about the credit card, did you get the credit card?
Oh, yeah. So I'm really anal in my video game, especially if I use a strategy guide, which, by the way, I've been using strategy guides since the NES. I actually do have those guides.
I'm not going to judge you. I'm the guy who struggled to beat. No, didn't struggle. I was the guy whose sole goal was to beat the game as quickly as possible. So while obviously I'm a hero in comparison to your villainy, I spiritually do not feel I have enough karmic purchase to mock you for the use of guides.
Nice. So, yes, I got the credit card.
It does suggest you may have a learning disability, but we don't make fun of that sort of thing.
All right, okay.
I mean, I had heard that the bus was a little short on the corner, but I hope those books gave you a sense of security as you read through.
Well, those books also had a lot of lore, especially the Zelda ones.
And that's where I won't hit you at all.
Yeah,
I think they're worth owning just to serve as a lore source.
I'm still waiting for my sequel to Link's Adventure, Nintendo.
Really?
As is every single person.
Yeah.
They promised a There's never been, for anybody who doesn't know this, in the NES, in the Zelda tapestry, it goes the original Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2, Link's Adventure, and then every game after that is a prequel.
All right. No, Paul, you're wrong, but spiritually you're correct.
Well,
don't worry. This is not an argument. I know a little more about this.
This is if
the
you
actual
say
statement is
fucking
this.
Game Boy, I'm gonna kill you.
No, the actual problem is this. In spirit, Paul is 100% correct. What people don't understand about the Legend of Zelda games, this is a little weirder, and it's a subject that consumes the nights of many enthusiasts, both casual and intimate, is you have the Legend of Zelda game. You then have the sequel. This is the end of the clear shared continuity that runs between every Zelda game. Because something happens at the end of Zelda 2 that the world isn't aware of, a timeline splits. This is all canon from Nintendo. I will let you know when the canon ends. There are 2 timelines created at the end of that game. One in which Ganon is resurrected, because you'll remember in Zelda 2,
right?
If you die, only then did Ganon's followers resurrect him. They resurrected him from the blood of Link. So the one reality was created in which Ganon went forward to be the villain of that world. Another reality is created in which Ganon did not get resurrected at that time. Now, from that point, everything that follows is largely debatable. When Dark Horse Comics started putting out those beautiful hardcover Zelda books, one of them is the lore.
Yeah, I thought the Divergent happened in Ocarina, not in the original.
No, it's right off the bat.
Yeah.
That game, the timing of Ocarina is a thing, because Ocarina can happen before Zelda 2.
Are we going to have this argument about the pronunciation of Ocarina?
Oh, that's a real world thing. If I'm getting it wrong, it's just because I lived in a shotgun shack and taught it myself every word I know from the backs of fucking sugar packets.
I'm just kidding.
That F-bomb I drop happily.
Yes.
But it's say it right for the people. We want to encourage literacy here.
It's Ocarina time.
I pronounced it for years as this sugar was packed on the Baltimore Pier. Then I learned it was closer to Ocarina. This is what I'm talking about, though. Yeah. The games take place in random order.
Yeah.
There are differing attitudes. And when that book came out,
yeah,
there was already an announcement that the timeline was rejected by the Nintendo post-publication.
I do remember that, but everybody likes that timeline.
I know they do. And there is a perfect timeline to establish in my mind. And the largest narrative path I can offer you right now without, yes, that's right, my notes in front of me, is that all of the awesome DS games, some were a little too hard, but the Phantom Hourglass and the Train and
that's if you won,
and they were all after Wind Waker. They were from the Good World.
The Good World, yeah.
I'll mention that, but all of them, it's crazy and nuts, and it's not essential to enjoying all of them. And and I will offer as a spiritual aside to this story, the canon relationship of the Mario Brothers games has often similarly been a thing.
Oh, they've destroyed that.
I am here to tell you what Mr. Miyamoto's official statement on all of this is.
I think I know this. Go ahead.
And by virtue of the fact that, yes, I may have disappointed some of you, I do indeed refer to the man as Mr. Miyamoto. He is one of my heroes. He is one of the magical people. He's a friend to us all. He understands what creating fun is. Love Nintendo or hate it, he's on a whole other level, people. Go lick your Call of Duties, because you know what doing that'll do? Summon a foul-smelling genie that gives you the last Avengers game for the PlayStation. Mr. Miyamoto knows how to build fun. You know, he's a hero of mine. And he has said, My answer to all of you, because he's always so beautifully respectful.
Right, yes.
But to paraphrase him, it was, I understand that the interconnectivity of games is very important to players. I will suggest, though, that the thing that should be more important is fun. How fun is redefined and how fun can be looked at, and you can get an experience that feels like one of our games with entirely different rules, ideas, powers, and scenarios. That's what's always going to be more important to me. And so ultimately, the Mario Brothers games don't matter if they're interconnected. I view every one of our game installments as a brand new universe with a brand new reimagining of the game before it.
I've heard that.
And as much as that might frustrate classic Keith Field, who was all about his Marvel continuity and would curse DC when it didn't curate a singular continuity, in the same way that a game is to be consumed and left, as you suggest, I am fine with that with Nintendo-style games. The idea that every Mario is his own Mario is liberating to me. But it would be cooler if we had a roadmap of how all the Zeldas fit together.
Well, I feel like
I think case by case, you can argue the point with Mr. Miyamoto.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the problem with Metroid. They stay away from Metroid because their fan base... It's the most serious Nintendo game.
So they say, if it doesn't share Nintendo philosophy, we'll let the secondaries
right,
it out.
And that's why all the Metroid games are kind of, sort of in order.
And I don't think it'll surprise anybody when I tell you of all the franchises, it's the one that I let go. Because it's so not Nintendo to me anymore. Because I'm obviously, Paul, obviously. Man, Baby Field can't handle that level of serious. No, Paul, because there's one game that suggests Mother Brain is a positive entity that became flawed. So F you, Team Ninja.
Yeah, that was
I will not accept your version of Metroid.
Who gave us Zero Suit Samus, though?
God,
64.
Paul. Every time I go to a Rule 34
Hey, y'all. Thanks for checking out what Talkin' the Guys Spake about. Add your voice to the conversation at Rat's Nest Studios on Facebook. And help grow the Infinite Geek Talk family. Subscribe and review on your favorite podcatcher. Infinite Geek Talk is brought to you by Infinite Heroes Comics, Cards, and Collectibles in Watertown, Connecticut, and Gorilla Valley Games. Infinite Geek Talk is a Rat's Nest production, recorded and engineered by Rich Johnson in the Rat's Nest Studio.